Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the third day of the Virtual Island Summit. My name is Keithlyn Carew, and I will be your humble host and moderator for this panel. I'm super excited because we're going to take you through what I think is one of the most pertinent issues for small island developing states, which is agriculture and food security. Today's panel is going to focus on forging the future of food, building security and resilience in agriculture. Before I go on to introduce the four powerhouse speakers that we have on this panel today, I would actually like you to simply drop us a hello or hi on the chat. Say your name, the sector that you're representing, and also drop the region that you're representing or coming from as well. So, as I mentioned, we have four powerhouse speakers that will be joining us today. And our keynote speaker comes from the Honorable Minister Saboto Caesar, who is the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development, Forestry, Fisheries, Industry and Labor from the beautiful country of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Honorable Sabuto Caesar is a young, brilliant, energetic community activist and advocate. A lawyer by profession, Mr. Caesar was born and raised in the constituency of South Central Windward. The former Island Scholar and Banana Growers Association scholarship recipient is a graduate of the Diamonds Government Primary School. His wide-ranging professional experience was garnered from his work as a lawyer, community worker, government senator, and minister. But most of all, he is a passionate activist for agricultural development. With that being said, I would like to introduce you all to our keynote speaker, Honorable Sabuto Caesar. Minister Caesar, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I wish to express sincere honor, love, and respect to all who are following, whichever region you are from. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to share with you today on such an important subject matter, forging the future of food, building security and resilience in agriculture. And I want to begin by placing the discussion on a time-sensitive trajectory. I am speaking from the context of the Caribbean, but there are many similarities with the growth of agriculture globally. And I want to begin with a historic position that for the most part, agriculture development in the world began from a subsistence form of agriculture. Then we saw that interaction between colonial powers and colonies and the establishment of what is known as the plantation economy, which had at its center plantation agriculture. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in the case of most islands in the British West Indies, you had from 1834, the end of slavery, the end of the apprenticeship system in 1838. And since then, you had what is considered to be the growth of the peasantry. When we speak about the growth of the peasantry from 1838 to today, where we are in 2021, we have to analyze the changes in the factors of production and how they have evolved. Because at the end of the day, agriculture is a productive sector, and it is dependent upon the evolution of the factors of production, being land, labor, and capital. So at the genesis of what we are now experiencing as the modern agriculture sector in the Caribbean region and in most places of the world, it started with the growth of the peasantry, whereby you had small farmers who on the fringes of estates started to grow crops to sell in the markets locally. And this led to the production of diverse commodities. And this is taking place This took place in regions where you had as the central commodities produced, whether it was sugar, cane, whether it's tobacco. In some instances, you had cotton or tobacco. Well, it's cotton, tobacco. We saw in the Windward Islands, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Dominica, and St. Lucia, the birth of the banana industry and a continuation throughout the 1900s up to 2009, where the preferential treatment for agricultural commodities continued. So when we speak about agriculture, we cannot do it outside of the context that prior to the removal of all preferences with the coming together of the European Union, that you had many colonial powers which protected their colonies by presenting to them preferential treatment for the commodities that they exported to Europe. Now all of that is removed and we're still faced with the issue and the topic, forging the future of food, building security and resilience in agriculture. So we are now speaking about a new dispensation, a post era, a post epoch, whereby we do not have any trade preferences, and we, for the most part, we are not promoting a monocrop economy. So you have diversification being the trend that is promoted by policymakers throughout the region and throughout the world, and you have that need to marry technology. Now, we are faced with the issue of climate change, and the selection of crops is something that we have to focus on firstly, but then we have to do so within the context of understanding and appreciating the vulnerabilities created in production because of climate change. There is another issue which definitely is taking the attention of policymakers, and it has to do with the food import bill. Food security and food sovereignty are two central pillars of the agricultural sector in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in the region and in most places in the world. Food security basically speaks to the issue of how do you address the food needs of your population. And we have to take into consideration that in many populations, there are some food items which are not grown in certain areas of the world, therefore they have to be imported. Some countries do not have a very profound or pronounced agro-food processing base, therefore processed foods are imported, and because of the tourism sectors in some countries, food is actually imported to satisfy the demands of the tourists. As a policy, we are advancing here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I am aware that throughout other member states of the OECS, CARICOM, and globally it is expressed by the FAO that first and foremost, taking into consideration our quest to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, one of which is zero hunger, that our focus primarily is on providing food for our citizens, and not just providing food from a quantitative backdrop, but also to ensure that the food that we provide, that the food is also safe food. So in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have moved to put a total ban on aerial spraying, a total ban on the usage of glyphosate products. Therefore, you cannot use any touchdown chemicals, any Roundup. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have a total ban on those chemicals, and we're moving towards placing other bans on other chemicals, which definitely the science has proven that it is creating significant health issues among members of the population. So you have food security and food sovereignty as two fundamental issues. And the vagaries of climate change, which we continue to grapple with. On October the 30th, for example, 2010, we had a natural disaster in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Hurricane Pumas, that destroyed 98% of the banana industry in the country. Now, that had a ripple effect, not only in the banana belt in the country, but also in our ability to export and to be able to hold on to many of the markets that we have internationally. The youth in agriculture continues to be a subject of great importance. We are advocating that there is a need for an exceptional cadre of multi-talented and multifaceted young farmers who are able to analyze the markets internationally and to add value to many of the primary commodities that we hitherto exported so that we can benefit from the entire value chain. There is the issue of advancing not only local trade, but the intra-regional trade in produce within the OECS, within CARICOM, and wherever you are listening, there are sub-regions and regions that I am aware that historically we have developed platforms for intra-regional trade. The issue of youth and youth engagement is definitely facing a battle in some places, because some persons are of the view that historically the parent will say to the child, I want you to have a profession in the services sector. And agriculture became tabooed in some areas of the world. And we are seeing a removal of that taboo in some areas, and more young persons are entering the production space for agriculture. What is the future of agriculture? How can we ensure that we have persons who are working in the sector and they're able to secure their livelihoods? What are we advancing as policymakers? How are we going to grapple with the vagaries of climate change? Well, we are creating a roadmap here in the Caribbean, and we are being assisted by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and we're working towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And fundamentally, we are seeing the need for greater cooperation, whether it is at the level of NGOs and community-based organizations, and especially the work of the cooperatives. The cooperatives definitely will continue to play a very important role in ensuring that we increase production and productivity, because central to the cooperatives, we have the amalgamation of the factors of production. We have seen in recent years the advancement of the interaction of women in agriculture, and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines globally, I know that there are several groups advancing this cause, and we are promoting this here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But we see a very bright future for agriculture in our world. At the end of the day, we have to ensure that we have food on the tables and that the food is safe. We are working to reducing our food import bill here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have a food import bill currently at $200 million. And we are working with several strategic partners to ensure that over the next 5 years, we have a very targeted approach of ensuring that the stakeholders within the country can be able to benefit from an increase in their earnings. I definitely expect that with greater partnership, locally, regionally, and internationally, that we will continue to build the resilience using the modern technology available to us to be able to encourage the youth, and to reach new markets. I want to wish this program this interaction, this conversation, all the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for taking us through that journey of not only the history of agriculture in the Caribbean, but also tying it to the challenges of climate change that we currently face, and obviously the issues of food insecurity and high food import bills that are also experienced in my country of St. Lucia and most of our region. I actually want to, I'm quite happy that you mentioned the issues of climate change and also food insecurity, because it ties quite well to our next speaker, Mr. Ralph Burkoff. But before I go to Mr. Burkoff, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone in the chat for saying hello. I'm seeing several people from Nigeria, from Australia, from the Caribbean. Keep it coming, people, from Bangladesh. I'm truly inspired to see that so many throughout the entire globe are interested in food security and agriculture. And I want to thank you also. Now I'm seeing Mauritius. Keep it coming, people. I want to thank you so much for joining us for day 3 of the Virtual Island Summit. So without further ado, I would like to present to you Mr. Ralph Burkoff, who is the co-founder and chief commercial officer for Alchemy Renewables, LLC, a US Caribbean-based project development and holding company specializing in climate resilient protected agriculture and integrated renewable energy systems in the Caribbean and global island states. Island AgTech holds proprietary technologies in the first engineered Cat 5 hurricane-resistant and climate-smart greenhouse systems, as well as customized high-yield, safe hydroponic systems designed specifically for subtropical climates. IAT is also establishing a manufacturing entity in Trinidad to produce its customized hydroponic equipment for global supplies. Island Growers Caribbean builds, owns, and operates its greenhouse farms with local island partners, with first projects to start operations in several islands in 2021, including Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Antigua. Ralph, I'm quite interested in all the projects that are going on with Island Growers LLC, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Caitlin, and that was a bit of a mouthful, but thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome all from islands around the world, and a special thanks to James for inviting me today to speak to a specific solution set that our company is focused on in protected agriculture and crop production to address some of the issues that Minister Sabuto just mentioned in terms of reducing and substituting the import food bill and making island nations more food secure. So I'll ask James if you could just run the first video. We're going to do a quick clip to show and summarize some of the risks involved in farming in the Caribbean. Thanks, James. So we are looking at some serious risk to farming across the region here in the Caribbean. going to take you through a few slides here to show what our company is doing, what we're actively involved in at the moment. We'll take some questions later. So we're focused on controlled environment agriculture, food production. And we just looked through the video and you could see some of the serious risks that involved in farming in the Caribbean. We have drought and floods. We have annual hurricane events that are getting worse every year. The geology of the region doesn't provide for a significant amount of arable land. Our farmers are getting older and young people are not very interested in soil-based farming anymore. And we have an increased level of resort development that's adding added pressure to the food demand in the region. So islands are now overly dependent on food imports. We're getting over $6 billion a year imported annually from the countries surrounding us, mainly the US and Canada. But small countries can grow a lot of food. And here's a pretty incredible graphic comparing the #1 and #2 agricultural output states in the world. USA, 9.8 million kilometers of area and a $1.1 trillion ag output. Meanwhile, tiny Netherlands, only 41,543 square kilometers, is almost as much and producing $94.5 billion in ag output. So how do they do that? Well, it's talk about being efficient in terms of the use of land. When you don't have a lot of land area, you have to increase your yields. And they do that through advanced ag tech solutions. And these are photos of the greenhouses that cover certain parts of the Netherlands, where they can grow food all day long, every day of the year, and all night. So our focus, of course, is on protected agriculture, supporting hydroponic production. And the problem, of course, is that all of those greenhouses you saw in the Netherlands are made from glass, and you know, they just don't survive. They couldn't survive the hurricane threats or even a heavy tropical storm threat here that we have in the region. Well,
Ralph, there's a bit of an interruption.
We did was
turn off your video.
It's flood resistant, it's pestilence resistant. Sorry?
Hi, Ralph. There's a bit of interruption, so we might have missed a slide or two.
I'm just going to turn off your video, but please go ahead without the video and the audio hopefully will improve.
Okay. So this is our first build in Barbados that went up a couple of months ago. This is a Category 5 hurricane resistant greenhouse. It's 5,000 square feet. We're you know, very much into rapid deployment as well, because we need to move things along quickly. So this greenhouse was built by a crew of 4 in 80 hours. It's a naturally aspirated greenhouse, and everything that you see on it is all Cat 5 rated. The membrane is a proprietary membrane developed by our partners at Sprung that is as close to glass as possible of any other type of greenhouse membrane, which is the best membrane for growing. And here you see an image from our Anguilla farm, which is shows how perfectly diffused the grow light spectrum is inside the greenhouse. And then we, through our Director of Horticulture, JC, there with a big smile, we've developed a customized, safe-based hydroponic system. This is a very high yield, very programmable system, very versatile. We can grow a diverse variety of crops, from greens to tomatoes to peppers to berry fruits, and adapted to medical cannabis as well. So, you know, what are we doing? We're focusing on substituting imported foods, what we call cold weather crops, which are the, you know, heavily imported crops into the region. And, you know, the advantages of doing this are obvious. Using hydroponics, we get extremely high yields using very little water. we can grow all of these cold weather crops. We're increasing the quality of the crop substantially. Everything we grow is organic, and our farms will be USDA organic certified. So a couple of examples of what we're doing in the region now. This is the newest project that we just announced in Tobago. This is a 42,000 square foot greenhouse farm that will grow primarily berry fruits, but also greens. This farm will expand 10 times this size over the next few years and produce almost 5 million pounds of berries a year. And the idea here is that we are going to create a foreign exchange opportunity by freezing and packaging these berry fruits and exporting them regionally. So currently 100% of the frozen berry fruits in the region are imported to the tune of some 40 to 50 million pounds a year. So we're going to try to make a dent in that right here in Tobago through our Berry Cove organic farm. We also do resort-based farms. This is in Anguilla. This is the Aurora Anguilla Resort Farm. The previous farm was at Cuisinart was destroyed by the Hurricane Irma. So we've rebuilt now to a Cat 5 level, producing about 10,000 pounds a month of both greens, vegetables, and berry fruits. And what's lovely about this is in the background, you'll see that we've also added about an acre or so of indigenous fruit orchards to this. So this will supply all of the resort's restaurants, about 6 or 7 restaurants, and produce organic quality food all year round. We're certainly looking at including and integrating clean energy as the farms scale up, and in certain islands where energy costs are very high, we're going to be adding solar and storage. We're going to just close off with another quick video clip, James, if you would, just showing a little bit more about what we're doing here in the region and how we're working. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ralph, for such a fascinating presentation. I'm really excited to see some of the island growers' greenhouses pop up throughout the Caribbean. So I'm really hoping that it's quite successful in 2021 in Trinidad and the other countries that you'll be launching in. There's been actually a number of questions for you in the chat, so perhaps you can drop an email or some type of contact information, Ralph, so that persons can get in contact with you. Also, for persons in the chat, I just wanted to mention that if you do have questions for the panelists, it would be easier if you put it in the Q&A section rather than the chat so that we can actually keep track of things. Now we are switching gears. Ralph just spoke quite a bit on protected agriculture, and we're moving on to a different form of agriculture, which is aquaculture. And the person who's going to be guiding us today is actually Mr. Jerry Mangena. He is the executive director of Aqua Farms, and they are focused on furnishing Tanzania inland and coastal people with new sources of income, improving access to food, and protecting aquatic biodiversity with sustainable aquaculture initiatives. It's great to see through our food security panel that we're having quite a bit of regions represented. Honorable Cesar and obviously Jerry have represented the Caribbean region, and Jerry from Tanzania. We're moving on to the African region. So Jerry, you now have the floor.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm so much pleased to be part of the Visual Island Summit of 2021, and greetings from Tanzania and the island of Zanzibar. Um, as introduced by Kathleen, most of the work that we're doing in this part of the world is centered around blue economy, and that is what I'll be focusing on. So with this title, Forging the Future of Foods and Building Security and Resilience in Agriculture, I'll start by just giving a simple brief on where Zanzibar is. So it's in Africa, in the eastern part of Africa, in a country called Tanzania. Tanzania, it's actually a union country of Tanganyika and Zanzibar Island. And Zanzibar Island, on the right, you can see we have two big islands of Pemba and Unguja and other small islets as well. The population of Zanzibar is approximately 1.5 million people, and it's considered one of the most dense populated islands in East Africa. Coming to the food in Zanzibar, so currently it's more about cash crops. Cloves is one of the highly farmed crops in Zanzibar, and it almost takes 75% of the total production. And this is highly used in terms of export. And then it's also followed by coconut farming, which also it's highly used in terms of export, as well as a cash crop, but also a little bit utilized as part of as a spice into our food. But also we do have a massive production of cassava, and this is one of the favorite Zanzibari foods that it's actually almost part of the daily meal of almost every Zanzibari in Zanzibar. It's not just this, but we also have small production of rice as well, and a little bit of maize that are used for local food. But Zanzibar is highly dependent on the blue economy as well as tourism in general, and that makes most of the food also to be imported from other parts of the world, including Tanzanian mainland, to ensure that it caters the needs of the tourists as well. But as Honorable Sabutu said, it's very important to look on how food is available locally for the local citizens, because in times of crisis are the ones who are in problem. So in Zanzibar, we do have the urban dwellers, and because most of these, they do not have home gardening and any production, so almost 80% of the urban dwellers are food insecure. And for the rural dwellers, because most of them have home gardening, and they could do a little bit of cassava for their homes, a little bit of maize for their homes, and then they are at least somehow secured. So recently there's been a huge shift on this priority of Zanzibar, where most of the energy is put around blue economy, and in this case I'm speaking on fisheries and aquaculture in general, where the government has put almost 7 trillion Tanzanian shillings just to lift up this angle, as well as to ensure that people can benefit mostly from the ocean that is surrounding. And this is just as a way to create an alternative way so that the island and its people and its economy, as well as the question of food security, could be more of sustainable. So seaweed is one of the major cash crops as well that comes from the waters, and Tanzania is, I think, the third largest producer of spinosum across the world, and it's actually supporting a lot of livelihood. 80% of the farmers of seaweed in Zanzibar are women, and this money directly goes to improve their livelihood as well as push other different activities, as well as availability of food in general. What does this mean? It means that they make money and then they go to trade the money to get food, which they can definitely eat. But also, despite like Tanzania is among the biggest producers, but seaweed is not highly utilized as a source of food or in Tanzania at all. But recently, around 2, 3, 4 years back, there's been a little bit of an adjustment where people are trying to process and make even some salads from seaweed. But among the most unknown crop in terms of utilization for the local people is seaweed. And there are a number of issues here. This first is climate change. There's been a lot of unreliable rainfall patterns in Zanzibar. We do have the strong rains and the shallow rains in those 2 seasons, and they have been not in the same patterns over years. And this has highly been affecting the smallholder farmers because they cannot predict when is the right time to farm. And that makes them not to have the correct and enough harvest at the end. But also in terms of seaweed, it's the changing oceans. We have seen a huge drop in terms of farming seaweed, especially for the cottony seaweed, whereby there's diseases like ice disease that are affecting seaweed in many ways and highly affecting the income as well as the trades that bring food on table to many of the farmers. So another issue as well here is that it's not easier for everyone to adapt quickly to changing climates, and a lot of people still need to be educated that they have to change their ways of doing things in that perspective. So at Aqua Farms organization, what we're doing right now is we're currently doing a vast number of research around seaweed farming, especially on the ice disease that has dropped the production of seaweed in the country, but also looking for alternative ways into which farmers could keep on producing seaweed without being affected with the changing climate. So we're looking at three angles. The first is the technical part in terms of diseases, correct seeds and everything. And then the second part is around social interaction and gender distribution, because if it's 80% women, how do we make sure that men are also represented, but also how is the income distributed in the family, following Zanzibar is an Islamic country with the limitation of women to be involved in various works as well. Another thing that we're doing is trying to teach the communities and the farmers on how they could add value to seaweed. And this is just a better way into which they could earn money locally instead of just depending on export market. And as we've seen, it's not a strong market when it comes to difficult times like the COVID-19 period. It has actually dropped a lot in terms of export, especially in the early days. So having value-added products out of seaweed, such as different cosmetics as well as different foods, then it creates local utilization of this crop, and that means we'll be having healthier communities. We should remember that seaweed is among the most superfoods in the world. So right now we are training women on how they could do deep water tubular farming, where we use PVC pipes and tubular nets to plant seaweed in the water depth of above 7 meters, which is different from the off-bottom method that is currently being used. And we support them with boats and engines to help them move to the deeper waters, as well as swimming skills, so that they could be able to run their farms smoothly in the best way. And our hope is that this type of transformation will also help them produce more seaweed, as well as put them in a better position to earn more income, as there will be no effects, or there will be a reduced effect of the changing oceans, especially on the sea surface temperature that has been highly affecting growth of seaweed. So I usually think with my team, and I would want to engage you, how can we increase the resilience of the Zanzibar Island and other island states towards the future of the food. It's very important to look on alternatives. And the alternatives here would be looking into new technologies into which they use small space but higher production, looking into ways into which we could also benefit highly from the ocean, because that's the most resource that we have in common as island states in terms of aquaculture and bringing up foods which could one way or the other enhance the nutrition state of the country, as well as good supply of fish especially and related products. With this, then I would like to thank you everyone for listening, and I welcome you to the paradise of Zanzibar. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that really insightful presentation, Jerry. And I hope you'll meet me at the airport, because I'll definitely take you up on that invitation to Zanzibar. I've heard it's a beautiful country. I really actually wanted to highlight the fact that, Jerry, you are the representation of the future of agriculture. You are one of the young advocates and activists in the agricultural sector. And it's really refreshing to see the projects that you've done. It's also refreshing to see that you take, as a man, you take a gender balanced approach to all of your projects and so on. And it's really interesting to see what's going on in the seaweed market in Zanzibar. We in St. Lucia have experienced issues with sargassum seaweed, and there have been a number of entrepreneurs who have been able to create fertilizers and so on out of that. But it's really interesting to see some of the projects that are going on there. And I'm hoping that perhaps you can spread that knowledge to regions like the Latin American and Caribbean region as well. I'm very excited, really, because now we have Jerry, but we're switching to a completely different region. Our next speaker is actually originally from Greece. And I'm quite excited because she's also a fellow woman in agriculture. Our next speaker is Miss Anastasia Sampulopoulou. She's an agronomist, a graduate student in global development, CALS, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell University. Anastasia is an agronomist, as I mentioned, from Greece. Her personal aspiration is to help smallholder farmers and rural communities find their voice and be able to stand on their feet. While working on her undergraduate thesis, Economic Analysis of Beekeeping and Honey, she learned firsthand the hardships of running an agricultural business. She realized that agricultural policymakers don't consider the difficulties that farmers endure. Most of the time, they don't have access to educational seminars, workshops about sustainable practices, and credit opportunities. That led her to pursue a master's degree in global development at Cornell University, sponsored by the Greek Fulbright Institution. In summer 2021, she conducted her in-person fieldwork component for her research project, Dairy Cooperatives, Sustainability and the B Corp Movement in Greece and the US. During fall 2021, she will be working with her academic advisor to develop a website with learning materials for starting and running a cooperative. It's really beautiful to have you here, Anastasia, as a fellow woman in agriculture. It's also really nice that you're from a completely different region, but you're targeting quite an issue that oftentimes on the policy side of things, we don't really mention, which is the integral part that smallholders farmers play in the agricultural sector. With that being said, Anastasia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hello, everyone. Hello from Ithaca, New York. As Kathleen said, I'm originally from Greece and I'm an agronomist. And today I will share with you a bit of some ideas that I came across in the summer doing my fieldwork component in Greece. So how we forge the future of food, basically. My approach is a bit different from the other speakers. So I thought about a thesis with my advisor about dairy cooperatives, sustainability, and the B Corp movement, and how I combine all those together. So I came across with a dairy cooperative in Vermont, in the United States, Cabot, that had certified as a B Corp. This certification basically is like a sustainability certification. So whatever company or a co-op could go and could go through the framework with some questions, and they keep some points. If you have over like 80 points, that means like you pass the test. So after this cupboard creamery case, that I saw that a cooperative basically could be combined, and also we could combine those two really good ideas, cooperatives and the B Corp movement, like a sustainability framework, we could say. How those two ideas could be useful. So if we use generally frameworks in our agricultural cooperatives and generally business, and use those business as a force for good, could be used really well to understand their impact. So basically, the implementation plan of my project was to go in Greece as an extension, we could say, to see if the cooperatives there could be willing to go through a sustainability framework to understand their impact, and explore also the initiatives for the community, the farmers, and the environment, of course, and see how much they could score in this framework. And right now in fall, I will conducting interviews, and I will conduct also focus groups with cooperatives here in US that have already passed through this sustainability framework. So basically, in Greece, in the summer, I chose 3 cooperatives. As you can see, they're like really in different places in Greece, but I will focus more, of course, in the islands, in the cooperatives in the islands. So we have the cooperative in Naxos Island, that is a big cooperative with almost 3,500 members, and a smaller one in the island of Crete with 300 members. But both of them are really well known about their cheese, and most of the Greek consumers, they prefer those cheese. So in Naxos Island, most of the challenging issue that I had interviewing the farmers, the dairy farmers, it was their concern: how viable could be the business, how viable could be the profession in order to pass that to the future generations. With the fluctuations of prices of feed, and also those issues and logistics concerning the island, because of course an island could not have their own feed for the animals. Most of the time had limited resources, so the feed and most of the things you have to transfer them from the mainland of Greece and generally. So how we understand the impact of this, specifically of this, like to transfer the feed or the impact of those activities. Also, another important point is how we can have a circular economy. So every activity to have a good impact. For example, those farmers, they had a lot of manure and they could use that in their crops. So we could say that they would do a sustainable approach. But another issue in that specific island and this crop was the whey. So the whey basically is what is left over from the cheese when we make cheese, and it's like a big quantity. So how we use that whey? We can use a bit in our crops or a bit in our animals, but if you have a big like quantity, how we can use that? We cannot dump it in a field, of course. So this crop is thinking and trying to find investors in order to do a biogas, basically, plant, we could say, in order to take the whey and some other waste materials and turn them to energy. So that's like this approach, we could say it's an innovative approach that could really fix those challenges, and of course are welcoming those approaches in agriculture in the future. And I think islands need to have those. And now we'll pass to the other island, the island of Crete. We speak for a totally different location and climate as well. This crop specifically was in a high altitude in the mountain. So also we had the same question: how viable could be their profession? There were, again, fluctuation in feed prices. Some of the people, they had to do like a second job in order to make ends meet. However, here we have another innovative approach, we could say. It was specifically 3 farmers, they were a family, and they thought to invest in a hydroponic system. As Ralph said before, with hydroponic systems, here's another one. So basically, we put seeds of grains in a container, and we have a production every day of fresh grass. So in the winter, that was really difficult for them because of snow to get the feed and have a quality feed for the animals. They could use that. We have also to consider here the logistics and the difficult aspects of the island. And another point that I would like to add here is incentives for sustainability. So this co-op basically will give an incentive to these farmers, a higher price, if the milk was more, better quality and the better sustainability practices. So as a result from all those experiences, we could say that to implement a framework and try to quantify our efforts is really important as the B Corp movement and their framework. And whatever framework, we could use that to understand our impact and our goal is really crucial. Innovative solutions, yes, we need them for the future of agriculture. And we have to consider, of course, the logistics of the island that makes the situation a bit difficult, and of course the resources like water resources, and last but not least the incentives for sustainability. We have to find a way to incentivize farmers to be more sustainable and have a better future. That was my presentation. Thank you, everyone. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Anastasia, for that insightful presentation. Again, it's truly wonderful to see the work that's being taken with regards to persons that are working with smallholder farmers. Similar to me, I really related to quite a bit of your work with my own work with our organization, Helen's Daughters, which is based in St. Lucia and just expanded to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis. And I think one of the most important things that you mentioned was the knowledge transfer and the access to information that farmers typically do not have. So thank you to all the speakers. Again, a wide range of areas were covered and issues were covered, and our audience was quite engaged. Considering that we still have Minister Cesar on and Anastasia just spoke, we have a really interesting question. Again, I'm a bit biased because I work in women in agriculture, and I'd like to pose this question to both the minister and to Anastasia. This question is from Annette. She asks, are there any success stories or challenges that can be shared on maintaining or encouraging gender balance in the agricultural sector?
Thank you very much. Anastasia, sorry for going first. Definitely, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have several cooperatives that address certain niche areas. For example, at one time, one of the thriving co-ops in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in agriculture was one called PINCO. And that was advanced by our dear sister Tucker, who's now deceased. And because of the impact of the volcano, definitely they would have been further impacted. But we have that aspect where we promoted and advanced the Women in Agriculture platform, and we saw where PINCO was one example. There is the WARD, W-A-R-D, Women in Agriculture for Rural Development. And what we do as a ministry, we work with these co-ops to ensure that they're able to find that international link. So for example, we ensured that AICA, they sponsored WARD and they provided the greenhouses and some of the best seedlings that you can find in the OECS are actually produced by this group. And then there is another group on the windward side of the island, and it's basically utilizing lands in the Rabaka Farms area. And again, it's a female co-op, and they have done significant work with the government, and they are doing excellent work, again, because of the international linkages that they have been able to develop. I just want to underscore this, that whilst as a ministry, we advance and we promote women in agriculture, we want to make it clear that we appreciate that these co-ops cannot operate in isolation, and they are a part of a broader production platform. However, we note the importance and the need to pay particular attention in ensuring that women in agriculture can take up significant leadership roles, and especially when it comes to the amalgamation of the factors of production. And I've seen over the years where these co-ops, they continue to shine, not only historical, but they continue to shine and to do excellent work. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Anastasia, please.
Yeah, really quick, I would like to add something. And inside we could say, so basically from the co-ops I visited in Greece, it was really hard to ask, like, you have any women, you have any women farmers? I would like to talk to them. There were really few. So I think that the gender also quality in agriculture is a bit of a challenging issue. And with education, I think like from an early age, in order girls and women to realize that and have a dream in order to be like a farmer or to be in agriculture, because it's a very important role. So I think if there's an education and some incentives for women to participate, they will do that. And of course, we have some NGOs in Greece trying to promote women in agriculture, and we have some cooperatives as well with women, but there are few.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. What I appreciate from actually all the panelists is the stress on inclusion. So not only women, but youth, persons with disabilities and so on. It's also good to highlight the actions, as the Honorable Minister did, in relation to the cooperatives, and as you mentioned, Anastasia, the work of these NGOs. But also we need to highlight the work of private sector companies that are trying to tie in smallholder farmers to these modern technologies that will actually assist in improving their production methods. And this question, Ralph, goes to you. How will farmers afford your technology? Is this aimed at smallholder or larger crop producers?
Well, we're looking at this as a commercial farming venture, first of all, but our policy is to partner with local partners, as we have done already in Barbados and Antigua. And last week we announced formally that we have partnered with ANSA Group out of Trinidad and Tobago, which is a considerable opportunity for us to expand across the region. But the technology, the greenhouse technology that is available is available to everyone. It is not inexpensive, unfortunately. But we are working with CARICOM and with private sector interests and with national development banks to try to create a product, a loan product, that small farmers can get access to this technology. We can't grow it all. There's just too much food and to grow. And we've had a lot of inquiries from farmers across the islands who are looking at specialty crops like ginseng or ginger, or even florals, that want to take a close look at accessing our technology and using the climate resistant greenhouse structures for their own use. So it's always been a problem. Farmers don't have close access to financing for loans. The institutions in the Caribbean, at least, are not really well set up for business loans, and certainly not for farmers. But we're trying to help out and do what we can. to work with with these institutions and the private sector to see if we can open up some capital for them.
Thank you so much, Ralph. And thank you for all the work that you've done and trying to include smallholder farmers, even though it is a commercial agricultural venture. I think just you speaking on the importance of protected agriculture and so on, it has been switching many persons' perspectives into looking at these types of structures that need to be integrated into our sector. So even though there are quite a few challenges, I think the advocacy alone is still helping. And now I'm going to switch to Jerry. Jerry, there's a very interesting question that came up in the chat from Simon, and I'd really like to hear your answers on this. What agricultural methods, such as aqua agriculture, seabed agriculture, pods, greenhouses, vertical agriculture, etc., will be key in building and providing food security, sustainability, and resiliency for island nations starting from now into the future? So perhaps you can, since you focus more on aqua agriculture, you can emphasize a bit on that.
Yes, thank you so much for the question from Simon, and his question around the technologies and the new methods of agriculture that are coming in place right now. How could they improve the sustainability of food supply in the island nations? So I would say in Tanzania we do have this format we call Kadogo shops. So if someone can't afford to go to a medical health center to get a full dose, they could go to a small shop that is a small pharmacy in their street, and they could get one pill every day, and that one pill will help them to finish their dose because that's what they can afford. So if we could bring the same replication method towards agriculture, that would actually bring greater supply of food to the human race in the island states and even beyond. Because if we can make everyone use technology at their available space, then everyone can produce a little food, and then that could be the best way into which we could have sustainable food systems. And in terms of aquaculture specifically, island states have a greater potential because they already have the ocean around. I understand mariculture is among the complex things yet, and a lot has to be done. But the good thing is that it's a resource that we already have. And the good thing as well is that the local people already have a vast knowledge that we can leverage on in terms of moving forward to greater productions and good technologies. So as the technology as good as the one Ralph has, and the point is if it could be integrated well into a way that someone could rent space, for instance, in that big unit and do their production. It could be for their own food as a family, but also something they could sell as well. Then that will actually make a maximum inclusion of everyone with capital and without capital, but also make everyone feel responsible to protect those facilities because they are capital intensive, and being capital intensive, it means we need them to last for a longer time as well. And in that perspective, everyone could benefit as well. So I would say whatever technologies we're bringing them, we should think on models into which we could involve people with no capital into a way that they could directly benefit into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Wonderful response. And Ralph, I see that your hand is up. Would you like to add?
I was going to go on a bit, but Jerry's brought it up, and we are looking at a very interesting model with a private investor who are interested in doing exactly that, Jerry, where we're kind of setting up like a storage rental unit, right, where we build a large greenhouse using our technology and rent small components of that greenhouse to individual farmers to do what they love to do. This is an exciting, so they could rent it, it would be affordable. And once they got some revenue going, they could then go and build their own greenhouse somewhere on their own land. And what I think is exciting about this is that farmers can then start specializing in specific crops and become experts in a monocrop that the island really needs, right? So we could have, a full display of different crop farming going on under one roof through different farmers. So that's an exciting opportunity that we are exploring.
Thanks for that, Ralph and Jerry. I think this is the beauty of this conversation. We're hearing all of the work that's being done. Even in the chat, we're hearing about the persons that could potentially generate some interest and partnerships through the work that all of you are actually doing. And what we keep on hearing, aside from obviously inclusion, integration, is also the aspects of the different organizations, individuals, companies, and so on that are collaborating or working together to make this work, to make food security a reality, to make access to nutritious and affordable food a reality. And I would like to pose this question to all of the panelists. How can island nations, governments, NGOs, local populations, and businesses coordinate and cooperate to ensure climate change resiliency and adaptability within the agricultural industry for the future? So it's open to all panelists.
Thank you very much again. And Ralph, thanks. It is definitely an area where small island developing states, we have to expend significant sums to study. It was noted by Ralph earlier that we have witnessed hurricanes in recent times that have devastated the best infrastructure that we have in our region. And you could go in the recent past, Ivan and all the others since then. As it pertains to droughts, we have witnessed here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that's about a year and a half ago, one of the worst droughts we had in 50 years. And if we put this in the whole context of not climate change, but natural disasters, we recently had the volcanic eruptions of La Soufrière. It is definitely not something or an area whereby the public sector can go it alone, because at the end of the day, the production is within the private sector space. And it brings me to a very important issue, and it is the capitalization of production. How do we find the funds from the banking system? How do persons obtain loans from the financial institutions to be able to get climate smart agriculture and to produce on a platform that is climate ready and resilient? Now, the government can always create the enabling environment. We have technicians, but many of our technicians were schooled prior to the onslaught of the many vagaries we are facing now in what is called the new climate. And they too are grappling with the challenges. So first of all, we have to have the transfer of the technology to address dealing with production and productivity in this new dispensation. And we have to find the means and the modalities for farmers to be able to engage meaningfully in the capitalization of production.
Perhaps I could follow on quickly to the minister's comments.
Definitely.
Because, first of all, I mean, our company is capitalized to the point now that we hope to expand to all islands in the Caribbean and then beyond. I think where some improvement could be made, however, is in the island's individual preparedness in creating a gatekeeper who is very familiar with the agricultural sector in that island, who, though this is normally done through their investment promotion agency. Most of the agencies in the Caribbean are really focused on ICT and tourism attraction, and there's really not enough focus and preparedness in in attracting agricultural investment. And there are a lot of companies out there, and I'm reading the comments here. I know that there's a lot of companies out there with technology that would love to do more in the Caribbean, that have their own solutions. But we need to provide a better gateway for agricultural investment from around the world into this region. I have written an article, some recommendations. I'll post it in the chat here when I'm finished. But you know, we still have problems coming into islands. Politicians do say, yes, we want to build our agricultural sector, but unfortunately the implementation group behind that isn't really up to speed, or as the minister noted, not so much aware of new technologies. Their laws and their legislation isn't really prepared for some of this new technology. So it needs to be upgraded, it needs to be streamlined. I think that will help attract more investment into the region.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Anastasia?
Yeah, I would like to add something. Generally, we could say that all those factors and stakeholders are like a system, like the ecosystem of nature. So, of course, everybody has to be there and take action. But I don't know if Ralph agrees with me, but I think that, and through also the big crop movement that I studied a bit, that the private corporations have the power to do some changes more quicker, we could say, faster than maybe the public legislation or the government. So I think that the private corporations could be the first movers of those changes, yeah, to secure the sustainability.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. And apologies, Ralph. I had Jerry on my mind for some reason. So thank you, Ralph, for your contribution.
Well, he's a good-looking fellow, Keith.
Jerry, any comments?
Yeah, so I would say that maybe the best way to go around here is let's refer back to Honorable Sabutu's keynote speech when he mentioned about youth. And we could tell in the island states, as well as in many other developing countries, we have a huge number of youth that are proactive and in one way or the other trying to do something to address the problems they see in their communities. But the biggest challenge that many youth face is a limited access first to correct information, but also limited access to enough support. And another one is limited access to enough funding for them to put their ideas in place. So from my own experience, I've been building businesses in Tanzania here. And one among the things that I think I have had an advantage over other youth, it's a supportive team that is willing to look into for me and always be in a position that I could be linked, very connected to financial options, but also having a very close relationship to the government as well. So maybe I would challenge the government first. It's very important to put youth as their first hand, because actually they are the runners and the movers of everything that is on ground. And if they are looking for better ways into which innovation could be in place, then they have to support these new ways of thinking and not just challenge them and stick to the old ways of doing things as before. But coming to the other side of the finance, there's enough ways into which young people could raise funds for themselves. But the big agencies and big successful companies, they should also try to invest in youth in a way that they are the new challenges, and make them as their strategic partners in a way that the new ideologies and the new solutions they have on their minds, they could be easily penetrated. Because at the end of the day, we are all looking at better states, at food secured states, and then we need manpower that is active thinking and creative to put it in place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for that. And this panel has really gone by swiftly. We literally have 15 minutes left. So I will take one last round of questions. The first of these will go to you, actually, Anastasia. We have been speaking of access to funding and finance for farmers and so on, and obviously access to information as well. And the question from Robinson was posed, and it mentions that, are there any existing platforms where smallholder farmers can be aware of certain funds that are available, or even information on sustainable agriculture or different types of agriculture?
Yeah, that's really important, because smallholder farmers, they are really dedicated to their work and their profession. It's quite demanding. I mean, it's for sure needs a physical strength to be there. And especially if you are like a stockholder and you have like cows and animals, you have to go every day. So it's really difficult for them to have access to information. And to tell you the truth, I mean, in Greece, for example, there's not like a specific website that you can go and get like a list of all the funding. You have to do like a really big research to find some funding and some help, maybe through to find some government funding as well. So I think that's a really good idea. And there are some NGOs that are trying to have that, like to connect farmers with information or generally funding. And that's a really good idea to have this a place, a platform, a blog, somewhere to connect those two. We could say those two really important key elements, farmers and information. Yeah, for sure. That's really important.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. And the next question will be posed to Ralph. Ralph, obviously, you've been speaking quite a bit on protected agriculture. And as you know, for many small island states, we're literally at the very forefront of adapting to and also combating climate change. One of the questions posed was, how is your Cat 5 greenhouse tested? Has it been able to withstand one of these types of hurricanes?
Oh, yeah. First of all, sprung structures have been around for 120 years. They invented tension membrane engineering. They have over 14,000 structures in over almost 100 countries around the world. The same engineering that we use in our greenhouse has been tested thoroughly, and we've survived dozens of major typhoons and hurricanes around the world over the past few decades.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Ralph. And I'm seeing that we perhaps may still have the Honorable Minister online with us. So I'm trying to see if I can sneak in one final question to him. Great, wonderful. Minister Cesar, how do you see the tourism industry tying in and partnering up with the agricultural sector in the islands?
Yes, well, there is a clear and a natural linkage between agriculture and tourism. First of all, from the standpoint of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the OECS, small island states, establishing an agro-tourism sector. I had the opportunity to be the Minister of Tourism in 2010, and we promoted the agro-tourism platform. When the tourists, when they come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, when they come to St. Lucia, Dominica, Grenada, to these islands, they not only want to stay on the beaches, they can be shown how we produce our food and the technology that we employ, since agriculture is definitely a very important and integral part of our culture. So from an agritourism standpoint, I think that we are sitting on an excellent idea that we should advance. On the other hand, there is a significant opportunity for persons who are engaged in culinary arts to be very creative in utilizing some of our local foods and adding them to the menu that is placed before our guests. There are some persons who will say, well, I have to make my fries from Irish potatoes. And there's some persons who say, well, let us try breadfruit fries and let us see what will be the uptake. So from an agritourism standpoint, there's a significant opportunity. And from the standpoint of our producers, targeting many of the commodities which are consumed by the tourists to produce locally. And from the culinary arts standpoint, for our chefs to look at substituting some of the imported foods so that our tourists can enjoy and partake in our cuisine, local cuisine.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And again, we now only have about 10 minutes, so unfortunately, we can't really take that many questions. Thank you to all of those who have been asking in the chat. It really has been buzzing, and thank you to everyone who has attended. Since we have all panelists on board, I would like to just invite each one to say their final few words to the audience about food security and the future of food and agriculture.
I want to again thank everyone who participated in this conversation. Let it not be the end, but the beginning of a broader conversation that will span other stakeholders. We depend on food, and we have to promote the production of safe food. It is not only going to be the work of the ministries of agriculture, but there is a need for a carefully crafted public-private partnership where stakeholders from the civil society, NGOs, and community-based organizations will continue to play a very important role. And I know that Helen's Daughters, Empowering Rural Women, that you will continue to play your role as well. Thank you very much, and I'm following your work closely. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, and we're looking forward to being in SVG very soon. Ralph, Anastasia, Jerry, please.
Well, I thought Anastasia was going to speak there, but I'll go first. We focused on a very specific sector within the agriculture sector in crop production, and most of the talk today has been about crop production, but agriculture includes poultry, dairy, fisheries. We need to make all of those sectors resilient in some way. That's either through infrastructure or regenerative farming or irrigation systems, or the many technology solutions there are today. And we have to, it's a broad-based issue. The technology's there. What we're doing here is not new. Our production systems are ancient. Our structural systems are proven and have been around for decades. The technology to solve a lot of these problems exists already today. I think that our differentiator is, I've lived and worked in the Caribbean for over a decade now, and I saw the issue, and we brought together the solution set to eliminate one problem, which is, how do we start substituting imported cold weather crops that are in high demand in the region? So there's a lot of other smart people out there that are very focused on other sectors within agriculture, that are very familiar with the different technologies that are available. We all need to come together and start solving some of these problems together, and we need to do it quickly.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Ralph. What? I keep mixing the two up. Anastasia, Jerry, any last words?
Yeah, I could jump in that. So as one of our questions, I think what was really nice question is about systems and how we could basically find a way to collaborate all those stakeholders and do the system change. I think that's the element, the key element that we have to find how we will change the system basically. And also how to find a way to have collaborations, especially between the private corporations. and the smallholder farmers. I think they could go hand by hand in the future, those two aspects. And how could we use business as a force for good? Because we have to rely on that right now. We could say they could do change really quick. Yeah.
Thank you, Anastasia.
Yeah, and from me, I think I would like just to challenge everyone from the small island states across the globe that there is a need to learn from one another. The Caribbean is a region. We have, in Africa, we do have a number of islands that perhaps we are not sharing so much in common, but there should be something to learn from one another that could improve our resilience towards sustainable food systems. But also, let's not forget that it's a responsibility of everyone to make sure that at our own level, at least we could have a carrot at our home garden. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry, I like how you ended that. It really has been, I think, quite a very interesting, fascinating discussion with my 4 powerhouse panelists. I would like to thank you again, Jerry, Ralph, Anastasia, and Honorable Minister Cesar, for all of your contributions and also for your time spent. I truly believe that island nations and overall countries, one of the main and major concerns globally, I think, is food security and reinventing and pushing forward agriculture. And again, I think I would like to also say thank you to Island Innovation for putting on this summit and for also ensuring that agriculture was well represented. I want to thank every single one of the 198 participants that we had in this virtual panel today. I really have to say thank you to you all. As you all know, agriculture is one of our wisest pursuits. I want to keep up the conversations, but not only keep up the conversations, but also keep up the actions. I'm truly inspired by everyone on this panel and also the persons that were in our chat. And I want to thank you all again for making the time to join this conversation. Thank you to our panelists once again, and to everyone, have a wonderful day and take care.